Robert Redford wasn't just another leading man in Hollywood. He was a symbol of elegance, quiet intensity, and a kind of screen magnetism that doesn't fade with time. For decades, he carried films that shaped American cinema, sometimes through raw, minimalist performances and other times through larger-than-life charisma. As we remember his extraordinary career, let's look back at 10 performances that defined his artistry and proved why his name will forever be etched in Hollywood history. Begins late in his career, when many would have already stepped away from the spotlight. But Robert Redford wasn't like anyone else. In 2013, at 77 years old, Redford stunned audiences with All Is Lost. A survival drama unlike most, this film contained almost no dialogue, just one man, his boat, and the vast, merciless ocean. With no one to talk to, Redford relied entirely on the subtlety of his craft. His face became the story. Every furrow of his brow, every desperate gesture carried the weight of survival. It was a masterclass in restraint and emotion. Critics praised the performance, awarding him a Golden Globe nomination and overwhelming respect for proving that even without words, his presence alone could fill a theater. In many ways, it was proof that Redford's magic had not dimmed, even after half a century in the business. But of course, his career didn't just thrive on survival tales. Go back to 1973 and you find him in one of the most sweeping romances of its era, The Way We Were. Paired with Barbra Streisand, Redford played Hubble Gardner, the golden boy writer who seemed to embody privilege, while Streisand's Katie was fierce, political, and unafraid to fight for what she believed in. Together, they created a love story that has remained unforgettable for generations. Redford's understated performance became the perfect counterbalance to Streisand's fiery passion. Their chemistry wasn't just believable, it was electric. He showed audiences that he wasn't just a handsome face. He could embody the quiet contradictions of a man torn between love and ideology. A year later, in 1974, Redford stepped into one of literature's most iconic roles, Jay Gatsby. Wearing the tuxedos and tailored suits of the Jazz Age, he embodied the dreamlike grandeur of the Great Gatsby. But beneath the polished surface, he carried Gatsby's loneliness and desperation, a man forever reaching for something just out of his grasp. The film itself was divisive, but Redford's performance was undeniable. He captured both the glamour and fragility of F. Scott Fitzgerald's tragic hero. Even today, his Gatsby remains one of the most memorable interpretations of that character ever brought to the screen. Then came the paranoia of the 1970s, an era that Redford tapped into perfectly with 3 Days of the Condor. He played Joseph Turner, a bookish CIA researcher suddenly thrust into a world of assassins and conspiracies. Redford was brilliant at transforming from an unassuming analyst into a desperate survivor. In an era shaken by Watergate and government mistrust, his performance carried a sharp, unsettling truth. Audiences believed in him because he seemed so real, the kind of hero you could imagine being trapped in the same terrifying situation. The thriller not only became a commercial success but also shaped the way Hollywood would approach espionage for decades. Sports fans will never forget him in The Natural. Here, Redford played Roy Hobbs, a baseball prodigy whose dreams were cut short by tragedy, only to find redemption years later. It wasn't just a sports movie. It was an American fable, and Redford elevated it with dignity and heart. Climactic home run that shattered stadium lights became one of the most iconic moments in sports cinema. Redford didn't just swing a bat. He reminded audiences of the hope and heartbreak tied to chasing greatness. What's fascinating about Redford's career is how seamlessly he moved between genres. In The Candidate, he embodied Bill McKay, a lawyer reluctantly pulled into the dark machinery of politics. What began as idealism turned into compromise, and Redford played that transformation with haunting precision. His final line, "What do we do now?" remains one of the most chilling endings in political cinema, a reflection of both victory and emptiness. By 1972, Redford was also embracing the wild frontier. Jeremiah Johnson cast him as a Civil War veteran who abandoned society to carve out a life in the mountains. It wasn't just a Western, it was a meditation on survival, isolation, and man's fragile relationship with nature. With little dialogue, Redford relied on his physicality, his rugged silence, and the sheer authenticity of his performance. The snow, the wilderness, the battles, it all became part of a character who seemed carved from the very land itself. The film grew into a cult classic and remains one of Redford's most personal roles. Of course, when politics once again collided with Hollywood, Redford was ready. In All the President's Men, he played Bob Woodward, the Washington Post reporter who, alongside Carl Bernstein, exposed the Watergate scandal. Partnering with Dustin Hoffman, Redford captured the obsessive determination of a journalist chasing truth against impossible odds. The film not only won 4 Academy Awards but also immortalized the power of investigative journalism. For Redford, who had long cared deeply about politics, the role was a natural extension of who he was as a person, an actor who believed in art with purpose. But if one film made him the charming face of Hollywood, it was The Sting. Reuniting with Paul Newman, Redford played Johnny Hooker, a small-time con man hungry for revenge. 2 actors had electric chemistry, and together they crafted one of the most entertaining grifts in film history. The movie went on to win 7 Oscars, including Best Picture. Redford himself earned his only Oscar nomination for acting here, proving that even as a trickster, he carried an irresistible charm. And then, of course, there is the performance that started it all, the role that defined him for decades, the Sundance Kid in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Redford's laconic sharpshooter stood shoulder to shoulder with Newman's Butch Cassidy, creating one of the greatest duos in cinematic history. Together, they blended humor, tragedy, and an easy charisma that audiences couldn't get enough of. That film launched Redford into A-list territory and cemented him as one of Hollywood's most beloved anti-heroes. By the end of his career, Redford had played everything: heroes, dreamers, rebels, and even villains. Fans may remember him as the charming con man, the haunted sailor, the political reporter, or the sharpshooting outlaw. Each performance left a mark. Each role carried his unique ability to make us believe, not just in the character but in the humanity behind the performance. So here's the question. Out of all these incredible performances, which Robert Redford role stands out most to you? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to know what you think. Even his honorable mentions deserve a place in history. From the quiet strength of the horse whisperer to the icy ambition of downhill racer, from the humor of Sneakers to the sweeping romance of Out of Africa, Redford proved time and again that he could adapt to any story. And in his later years with The Old Man and the Gun, he went out the way he came in, with wit, grace, and undeniable charm. Robert Redford may be gone, but his performances remain immortal. He wasn't just a movie star. He was an artist, a storyteller, and a man who left behind a legacy far greater than fame. Whether it was through film, directing, or his lifelong activism, he showed us the power of cinema, not just to entertain but to inspire. And perhaps that's the greatest role he ever played.